Let's start by playing a game. I'm going to share some stats with you, and I want you to guess what time period it might be. 20%. That's the number of schools that are intensely segregated. Just 30 years prior, it was just 7%. $12 billion. That is how much is owed to historically black colleges due to underfunding. $14,300. Black college graduates earn $14,300 less than their white counterparts. Latinos earn $13,200 left. So, I want you to guess what time period it is by a show of hands. 1960s? 1990s? Or present day? If you guess present day, you'd be correct. These inequities are why I work in the field of higher education. My name is Dr. Latoya Watson, and I've been a scholar practitioner for over 20 years, committed to education equity and systemic change. This is personal for me. I attended inner-city schools that did such an amazing job despite being underfunded. When I moved to the suburbs, I experienced in-school segregation, where the school was diverse, but my honors classes were not. And then when I got to college, I felt isolated because only 1 to 2 students looked like me in the classroom. But fortunately, when I got to graduate school, my program was diverse. We could have difficult but respectful conversations. I distinctly remember talking about affirmative action. It got very heated that day, but we still were able to go to happy hour afterwards. My hope is today that we can spark some difficult conversations and figure out a path forward. But first, I want to take a step back to look at some examples in history. The Morrill Act of 1862 expanded access to higher education by creating a national network, land-grant institutions. But whose land did they grant? The land of indigenous people. The second Morrill Act of 1890 established historically black colleges and universities, the same ones that are underfunded today. And this is after Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. The GI Bill in 1944. It brought up a high middle income. It lifted a whole generation to the middle class. But it blocked out black veterans. The Higher Education Act of 1965 expanded access to low and middle income families, but there was a backlash. We started to shift the thinking that college was a private benefit instead of a public good. And it hurt all of us, but it hurt marginalized communities the most. And in 2023, affirmative action was overturned because there was no compelling reason to keep it. But yet, I shared stats that show that education inequity persists. And yet, we have a history of systemic racism. You know, it's really scary for me to be up here today. As a black woman, I'm not allowed to critique America and its institutions. It's often met with people being very defensive, very dismissive, or just outright vitriol. Which brings us to the first reason why the disparities exist today. We're unwilling to face uncomfortable truths. These uncomfortable truths we're unwilling to face. So when I think about it, it's gotten so bad that we're attacking diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. We have DEI offices and we have cultural centers. And it's really important to note that if you have students who are marginalized on your campus, it's really important if you want them to exchange in intercultural and brave conversations. You also need DEI offices and cultural centers to provide safe spaces, communities of support, education and advocacy. But at the same time, it's not the job of marginalized faculty, staff, and students to solve an institution's problems, because systemic problems require systemic solutions. Which brings us to the second reason why inequity persists today. We have not thought of or focused on meaningful systemic solutions. And that requires a mindset shift. Ben Simone calls it a shift from deficit-mindedness to equity-mindedness. Association of American Colleges and Universities calls it a shift from expecting students to be college ready for us to being student-ready colleges. But what does this look like? My office is a career readiness office. And one of our programs, I'll give you an example of it. We have a program for summer undergraduate students who want to pursue science research in graduate school. So first of all, when we promote that program, we don't just put it on our website. We go to the students. We go to orientation, their classrooms, student organization meetings, departments. You get the picture. And then we also make sure that it's funded and we provide housing, because many students cannot afford to build their resume for free. And then when the students are very apprehensive and they're worried about them not being able to do this opportunity, we say, we got you. We're going to take you to Discovery Day so you can work in the lab, talk to MDs and PhDs, and picture yourself in these roles. And then during the application process, we don't assume that people have family members at home who can help them. We don't assume they know how to navigate the resources on campus. We bring the resources to them. We partner with our writing center to work on personal statements. We then also help them through the interview process. And in the end, the program is diverse. And if they're not selected, they know that we have their back and they know how to do the resources. And that is how we do all of our programs. Georgia State University has become a national model for this. They really focus in on data, and they use that data to better understand their students' needs and how to fill the gaps. I know earlier I talked to you about wanting you to have difficult conversations after today. I want you to take a step further than that. I want you to think about how you can do that right where you are, in your student organizations, in your classrooms, in your departments. I want you to think about what are the barriers that you have for access and persistence. What are the policies and practices that you do that replicate inequities in society? And what are your students' greatest needs, and how can you meet them where they are? Because that is what equity looks like. Thank you.